Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Giobbi, and I want to welcome you to this MultiValue market update. We have nearly 150 people registered for this webinar, and this is an exciting time for MultiValue, and I hope you enjoy the content. For those of you who do not know Zumasys, we are a infrastructure and cloud provider. We also provide a number of professional services to customers generally running high-performance ERP systems, oftentimes legacy systems. We have a strong history in MultiValue. We have just under 100 employees and do roughly $27 million in revenue, and we're based in Irvine, California. Our history in the PIC data model really dates back to my co-founder and partner, Joe Cupp. We're experts in the D3 database, and about 2.5 years ago, we did 4 acquisitions. Many of the folks on this call run AccuTerm. We were pleased to partner with Pete Schellenbach and bring AccuTerm into the Zumasys family. We also acquired a number of development tools from a company called The Nerdery, or Sierra Bravo, and some of those became the basis of our REST services, which we'll talk about a little bit today. We also became an exclusive distributor for OpenQM, which is a low-cost, very agile database that comes out of the prime information kind of lineage, and is a great target to run your applications on. And lastly, the 4th acquisition we did was JBase, and we purchased both the IP from Temenos as well as the support and sales and marketing from a group called Empower. So that's a little blurb on who we are. I am joined today by some very special guests. We have Rob DeRocky, who will be presenting to you today. Rob is the VP over various aspects of IT at Cook Medical. They're a multi-billion-dollar company that runs JBase. Bruce Decker is joining us as a systems engineer for us, based out of Colorado. And Patrick Payne is based out of Sacramento, and will be talking to us a little bit about the user interface options that are now growing in availability for the PIC market. So with that in mind, I wanted to start by sharing this document. Many of you have seen the MultiValue family tree over the years. When we acquired JBase and AccuTerm and the rights to OpenQM, we felt it was needing updating, so we partnered with Don Wolfius, and we have these available in poster size. We'll be sending you kind of miniature posters for everybody who attended the webinar today, and you know, this is a great time of consolidation in the PIC market, but also opportunity, and it's a great way to just wax philosophically about where you started in PIC, and I hope you enjoy it. So when I present various updates in the MultiValue market, I usually kind of go through the 5 phases of the PIC market, and I'm not going to bore you with all 5 of them, but I wanted to end with 4 and 5, or just share 4 and 5 with you today, which is the market has been consolidated. You know, we had a time where PIC was licensed to everybody, and there were derivatives, and there was, you know, when I was a kid, there was literally dozens of licensees and alternatives. And today we're in a situation where it's been consolidated under Rocket Software. Rocket is an excellent software company based in Massachusetts, and with their acquisition of TigerLogic, they now own D3, Universe, Unidata, and a variety of other products. And as I mentioned, you know, 2.5 years ago, we acquired OpenQM and JBase, and we did that partly because we wanted to make sure that the market had options, and we kept these applications as competitive as possible, and that means choice. So we are both a partner with Rocket and also you know, providing alternatives if and when it's needed. What motivated a lot of our decision to acquire software was that we had been in the cloud business for 11 years, and this webinar is not a pitch on cloud computing. It continues to be something that's an option for a small percentage of the PIC users, and we'll talk about it. But for those that were moving to the cloud, we wanted the ability to really have a database that we could multi-tenant on our platform. And we saw the rise of software as a service, things like NetSuite and Xero, and these high-performance accounting systems as really the new threat for PIC. It's no longer about big ERP, Oracle, Epicor, etc. It's really about keeping our eye on these software as a service companies. And essentially, we wanted to acquire the technology, AccuTerm, JBase, etc., to start presenting these apps through a browser in a data center with single sign-on, session persistence, rental licensing, database multi-tenancy, and a number of other things. And our view is, and our goal is to breathe new life into your applications and make them relevant when that next generation CEO comes in and starts picking on that multi-value system. We want it to be just one more app in the cloud that really competes and is highly tailored to your business. So our passion and our vision at Zumasys is to ensure that your apps can thrive well into the future, and cloud was a part of that strategy. Again, I won't belabor this. We just talked about it. These are some of the tenets of software as a service, and we can achieve all of these today for a multi-value user in our cloud, and we are busily rolling out new features for both AccuTerm and our databases, which we will talk about today. So whenever I talk to a PIC user, I say that we're united by three things. So the first is your PIC application is really the workhorse of your business. And if you reflect on it, it is the most critical application in your business. It does the order entry usually, often does the accounting. It's the lifeblood of your environment. But as a workhorse, the analogy is also that it's maybe been slightly neglected by ownership at times, meaning they bought their application license 30 years ago. The vendor may or may not still be in business, but there is really no ongoing cost for most PIC applications. The only cost you have is a database maintenance license, which might be $100 per user per year. So one of the challenges we see with PIC is that it's highly valued by the company. It's a great competitive differentiator, but it's also maybe been a little neglected, and there's a bit of an IT debt that's built up, and sometimes these systems aren't cared for from an infrastructure standpoint and from a modernization. We often will walk into computer rooms and see servers that are 12, 15, 20 years old, which is quite ironic when you consider how important the application is to your business. So the number one thing that unites us is the app is a workhorse. The second thing is that all of us are somewhat dissatisfied, maybe an understatement, by the user interface. And the user interface you see below is, a traditional character interface, and the one above is what you would get with something like NetSuite. And generally, I think, we could have a whole webinar on user interfaces, but generally people want their apps to look better. They still need them to be performant, and you need to be able to type ahead and have all the speed and efficiency that your business has come to depend on. But generally, there's some pressure and critique over the look and feel of those apps. And the last thing is that we're all coming to grips with the fact that we need to attract young developers to this data model. And this is going to be, I think, the single most exciting thing we share with you today. Working with some partners, we've done some pretty exciting things to counter that trend. We also have booked over the course of 5 years about 20 PIC developers onto our staff. Of course, they range from age 40 to 70 plus, but really the key is attracting young developers. So those three things unite all of us on this call. The other thing that unites us is PIC can be used to do some very amazing things, and I'll tell the story of a Universe user. Customer uses Rocket's database, and Snap-on Tools, which just about everybody knows, it's a 100-plus-year-old company, several billion in revenue. They run all of their credit through a Universe system running on the Cubs application. And I met the gentleman who implemented this system years ago, and he had this massive ring on his finger. And I said, "What's the Snap-on bling for?" And he said, "It's a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I'm the only one in the company who's ever received one." And I said, "What was it for?" He said, "It was because I implemented PIC. And that system to this day does instantaneous credit approvals for people looking to buy Snap-on tools at a truck. The back end runs 100% through MultiValue, and it has set this gentleman's entire career, and he's about ready to retire on a total high note. So that's the power of PIC. And I think many of you can share those own stories of great things that you've tamed in your business or great accomplishments. The other reality is that the young generation is very hard to train on PIC. This gentleman's name is Remington. He works for one of our largest D3 customers, Ganal Lumber. And this is something I've seen some of you doing, which is Ganal went into their lumber yards and found somebody who knew the business well, that was young, that also displayed some technical aptitude. And they were able to find Remington and bring him in. And after years of trying various development additions to their staff, they found that Remington gave them more bang for the buck and has been just a runaway success. And that's an encouragement. But it's also a hard thing to scale. There are only so many technically inclined folks on your front line that meet this criteria. So the question becomes, what can we do differently? How can we attract young developers to the PIC market? And before I introduce our first guest speaker, I want to tell you a little story about them. So Cook Medical was formed by a gentleman named Bill Cook. The owner of the company became the first billionaire in Indiana, but he also automated his business on microdata. And he learned how to program the microdata, and for the longest time insisted that everything be done in proc. But he basically used PIC as a way to evolve his company into one of the most successful medical device companies in the world. So PIC is in their DNA, and today Cook has 11,000 employees, 5 billion plus in sales, and all kinds of accolades. They remain privately held, and today they run JBase across the globe. They have 5,000 plus users on JBase. They have 100 JBase developers, but try as they may, they never have enough developers. They have a hungry machine to continue to bring more resources in. And this brought Cook and Zumasys together, and we're pleased to share with all of you today that we have just finished our first semester course with Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana. This is the state's largest public post-secondary institution. And what we did is working together, the folks at Zumasys with JBase and Cook trained Dr. Nixon. We used a variety of different training methods from both Cook and ourselves and some of John Sis material. And we held our first class, and it ran for an entire semester. They studied basic programming methods in JBase. And at the end, there was a test, and I'll let Rob share with you some of the outcomes, but 4 internships now work at Cook, and we're now busy looking, to expand this program. When we asked the students at Ivy Tech why they took the class, their number one response was that everybody knew Cook. Cook was the company that people wanted to work for in Indiana, and if there was an opportunity to learn a technology and be part of a leading company, it was a killer combination. It got people interested. So the class was a success, and we're busy moving on to future classes, but I'm a big believer that you can only listen to one person speak for so long. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Dirac. Rob was one of the very first web developers at Cook and helped them get onto the internet, and I will turn it over to Rob now.
All right, thanks, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this really exciting program for us. It really solves a challenge that we've faced for several years, and a challenge that I know is common to many within the multi-value space. So a few introductions. I'll introduce myself. My name is Rob Dirac. Again, Paul mentioned I'm Vice President of Global IT Strategies. I've been with Cook for 20 years in a number of different capacities with Cook, from application development through where I am today from a strategy perspective. I'm joined today by Joshua Richardson, one of our enterprise architects. Joshua also has 20 years with Cook. I think we came in the same year, and has been in multiple roles. He started out as a JBase developer and has moved up since. So I don't have to tell you about Cook because Paul did an excellent job in sharing our story. I will mention that our global headquarters is in Bloomington, Indiana, which I feel is relevant, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Bloomington is a college town of about 50,000 people, and we're located 1 hour south of Indianapolis. So we've been using JBase since the mid-90s, and even before that, as Paul mentioned, the founder of our company, Bill Cook, was working in multi-value technologies even before that. So JBase is really today at the heart of many of the core systems that we run, our manufacturing systems, customer service, inventory, those sorts of systems. We have a number of developers on staff, and we face the challenge of finding those talented developers who have JBase experience, or at least some multi-value experience. And if you've ever gone out looking for a new employee out there, that's hard to find. Compound that with the fact that we're still a growing company, and that many of our developers are long-term developers are starting to retire. So what we've found has worked in the past is, we find good core developer, and then we'll teach them JBase ourselves. Now that's fine if we're only looking to onboard maybe 1 or 2 developers every 4 or 5 years. But as I mentioned, we're a growing company. How do we do that with much more cadence, which doesn't also burden us down with that teaching responsibility? So I mentioned earlier, we're located in Bloomington, Indiana. Bloomington is the home of Indiana University, very large, Big Ten university that we have a great relationship with. A number of our entry-level employees come from IU. I came from IU, so I'm a little biased, but we do have that good relationship. So if we're going to go out and partner with an institution from a training perspective, we usually go to IU, but we chose not to go to IU because what we found is, most of those entry-level employees, they'll come to Cook, whether it be in IT or another function within the organization, and within a couple of years, they're wanting to go to the big city, they're wanting to head to the coast, that sort of thing. So they end up leaving Bloomington, which it's great for the time that we do have them. But how do we build a cadence of long-term employees with the skills that allows them to get in the door and then move up, just in the same capacity that Joshua and I have over the past 20 years. We chose to partner with Ivy Tech, as Paul mentioned. Why Ivy Tech? Well, we found that the students that go to Ivy Tech, the community college, are they have more firm roots within the community within Bloomington, so they're going to stick around. They're not looking to move back home or anything like that. We also find that Ivy Tech has a strong contingent of students who are looking for a second career. So somebody that's older in age, and they're going back to learn a new trade. So again, they have their family. They're already rooted here in Bloomington. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joshua Richardson. Joshua is going to kind of tell about that relationship with Ivy Tech, what we're doing, how we've done it, and then we'll kind of wrap up with where we are today and where we're headed in the near future with this program. Joshua.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity today. Rob mentioned a lot about where we've come from and the partnership with Ivy Tech. In my previous role, I was managing the majority of the JBase developers, and the projects just keep coming. And if you're a pick shop, you know that there's certainly usually not a shortage of work, but typically a shortage of people doing the work. And so I was told that, well, we'll get you more people, and I said that doesn't do me any good if I have to stop doing your projects to train them. And so that really is what spearheaded this partnership with Ivy Tech. And so it's been a great experience. Our first class was the spring of this year. We had 10 students enrolled. As Paul said, we actually pulled 4 of those students into a 12-week summer internship here at Cook, with the hope that out of those 4, we'll be able to retain several, if not maybe even all of them. We'll see where that lands as long-term Cook employees as we go forward. So working with Dr. Nixon, we did basically a typical college-type class. We brought Dr. Nixon in and trained her with a week-long intensive training on JBase, and then worked with her and the folks at Zumasys to come up with the training curriculum that she used in the class. It was great because Cook was able to come in as guest speakers for the class. Zumasys came in as guest speakers for the class and had a great opportunity to work with those students. What really excited me was Cook was able to, in this partnership, give the capstone project for the class. So I came up with 2 projects that I thought were of equal difficulty. They split the class into 2 groups. One of the groups worked on an order entry project, and one of the groups worked on a time entry project. And so the students knew when they got their assignment about midway through the semester that they would be presenting that assignment at Cook, on Cook facility, with members of Cook executive team, members of Ivy Tech's executive team, folks from Zumasys, all in attendance. And so that was exciting for the students. It was exciting for us. And to see what they came up with an entry-level class was really exciting. The class has progressed very nicely. We're looking at the fall semester starting very soon. August 16th, I believe, is the date. And Ivy Tech is actually going to webcast this fall class as well. So that's very exciting to try and figure out how we move that forward. We're in conversations on what an advanced JBase class would look like, since this is a beginner JBase class. So lots of exciting things moving forward. I'm excited to see people get excited about PIC again, and to see how we can get the younger crowd involved. And as Rob said, you know, the benefit to Cook here is how do we cultivate long-term Cook employees. So I did see there was a question that was raised in the chat window asking about EDI. So just a little bit of background. I won't take up too much time. I would venture to guess in today's Cook world, 90% of our systems are still JBase. So for many, many years, Cook shied away from most off-the-shelf applications, and we wrote everything that we do, from the manufacturing, lot traceability and tracking, through order taking and fulfillment and distribution. All of that was written inside JBase. And so we are slowly looking at some off-the-shelf applications where we feel they make sense because we have a shortage of JBase developers, and to focus our JBase developers on the areas where we still want to be highly customized, like our manufacturing. But to answer the EDI question specifically, we do use EDI, and what we're doing is we're using an off-the-shelf application called Sterling Integrator, which is bringing our EDI orders into the system and translating that into a flat file that JBase is then picking up. And for a little bit of context, Cook takes approximately 4,000 orders a day for our products. 85 to 90% of those orders that we take a day come in through EDI. And of those 85 to 90% that come in through EDI, every one of those orders is translated and dropped to JBase. JBase then processes that order to verify it's a good, happy order, and 85 to 90% of those orders continue on to the distribution center with zero human touch. And all of that business logic on, is the order good, is the order clean, can we process the order, is done inside JBase.
So, so yeah, we couldn't be happier with where we are with the training. Actually, back on the training now. Thank you, Joshua.
Yep.
So yeah, we couldn't be happier where we are, having gone through just the first semester. We're moving to the second semester. You know, it really started off with, you know, the challenge of, if we can't find JBase developers, how do we create them? And I think we have a great partnership with Ivy Tech, and I want to thank the folks from Zumasys, without which this wouldn't be nearly as successful as it has been. The folks, Paul and his entire team, have been absolutely excellent to work with, and they're highly involved in what we've been able to achieve. So I want to thank them. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Paul. I think it goes to Bruce next.
Okay, thank you, Rob. This is Bruce Decker. I work for Zumasys. I've been with the company about 2.5 years and long background in PIC, going way back into the microdata reality days some 30 years ago. So today I was asked to speak a little bit to a few topics, and I'll see if I can advance the slide here. Having a little, Yvette, would you be able to assist me with a slide advance? All right. So we're going to go over a few market realities today. And what I wanted to talk about is kind of, let's talk a little back in time in the 2000 to 2010 era and kind of what we were facing at that time. We were looking at SQL really being on the rise, and this idea that if you weren't running a SQL-based application, you really were running a serious business application. And we fought long and hard to extol the virtues of what the multi-value model offered, but we were constantly sort of on the defensive against SQL. Advanced development tools at that time were very SQL-centric. New hires were trained in SQL, and very few had heard of PIC. And then at the same time, we had the graying of the multi-value developers going on. And a lot of organizations made the jump to SQL. Some succeeded, some failed, and we all know of examples where, especially for complex ERP applications, there were some spectacular failures trying to move to SQL-based ERP systems. So then there's a whole category of users out there that have kind of waited patiently because, honestly, PIC did a great job with a low total cost of ownership. And oftentimes you did the analysis and looked at the dollars and said, you know, it really makes sense to stay where we're at. And so we waited patiently, a group of us. So then fast forward to the 2010 to 2017 range, and some interesting things happened technologically. Some new thinking took hold out in the market space, and this was mainly driven by the open source community. SQL's stranglehold was sort of broken, and the world was no longer thought of, or at least in IT, as everything had to be SQL-centric. And so some new data models, some new thinking, new tooling, all kinds of new thinking kind of came about in this period of time. And so some new databases were born, the NoSQL databases, and some new development tools that were not SQL-based. They actually operated on a different paradigm. So suddenly, we start to look at multi-value, and it's becoming a whole lot less odd, a whole lot less different than the SQL world. And new hires being trained out of school are now able to think not just in SQL terms, but are now looking at new technologies. A lot of the JavaScript and a lot of the JSON document and data models are starting to come out. And so these are becoming acceptable ways of thinking about business problems. And so what's driven all that is really getting back to the idea that we need a simple architecture that's more nimble and being able to more quickly deliver what a business actually needs instead of spending a lot of time wrestling with more rigid technologies. Okay, so where I like to usually start when I'm speaking to folks is to try to offer something that most folks have recognized. And if you watch any amount of television out there, you've probably seen the ads that Microsoft runs where they are they're advertising their cloud solutions. And one of the national campaigns, actually it's an international campaign, is they promote a solution from a company called Temenos, which is a banking application, which has now become one of the most popular banking applications in the world. And the whole idea that Microsoft has in this ad is that they're showing how this banking application, which is mobile aware and available in all markets across the world, is sort of changing the world, allowing capital to be freed up in places where it wasn't available before, and delivering banking services to the world in general, and starting new businesses. And of course, it culminates with a big bang where Microsoft talks about the Microsoft Cloud is changing the world. So there's two things that Microsoft doesn't say in that advertisement. The first is that those applications, those banking apps, are running on the Microsoft Cloud, but they're not running Microsoft Windows. They're running actually Linux. For some reason, they failed to mention that. The second thing that they don't mention is that those applications are written in a multi-value database running on JBase, actually written in good old Pick Basic. So what this illustrates for us is this idea that, number one, the multi-value technology still has a place today, that the actual thinking around how you approach application development and design is a simpler approach, a more nimble approach, and it's relevant. And because the new thinking has taken hold amongst the open source community and the kids that are being trained in school, that it's not such a foreign thing for us to be doing. And a lot of the new development tooling works with it. And what we're doing here at Zumasys is presenting the JBase technologies and adding a lot of the trappings necessary to make that even a more comfortable environment for the next generation of programmers. And so with that, I want to hand off to Patrick Payne.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Let me switch over and just make sure I can click to these slides. So hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Payne. I'm the technology evangelist here at Zumasys. I've been with Zumasys for just a little over a year. Prior to that, I have about 25 years as a CTO for a large mortgage company. And my expertise there was from when I first started was, I always like to tell people I was never knew what I wasn't supposed to do. So I made that pick system talk to just about anything we had to talk to. And in that industry, we had to put up web pages and extend it out to our customer base, and plus interface and talk to any systems out there. And so over the years, I was tackling all the same problems you guys all tackle, finding ways to get the technology to work. The system was very integrated with the whole company. And every year I'd come and talk to Paul, and eventually he convinced me to come on board and share that experience. And so I travel around now and do pre-sales and work on product development. So the big thing I always looked into was open standards. And it's really been driven by the internet. So what's happened in the market is no longer does Microsoft or Sun control our technology. Anymore, you see these larger technology companies such as Facebook, Google, and Twitter who have to go off and solve their technology problems, and they found that those solutions weren't working. So they went out and developed new products and new technologies that in the end mirrored closely to what we were seeing within our pick world. And the big thing was they weren't SQL centric. So what I would do is I'd go out and look at the big problems we were having in our pick world. And the number one thing in pick or multi-value was, what is it? And what it is a NoSQL document database. And that term is something that's popped up in the last 5 to 10 years because it was developed by these large internet companies. And they really kind of reintroduced the pick model. So we are a document database, not a SQL system, but a document database. And if you've heard the term MongoDB, it's probably one of the more popular ones out there. And what's interesting is when you look into those tools is that you see the benefits, and that industry is seeing all these great benefits from that model, which is the same benefits that we saw from our model. And so it's very important to read info on these things and look at the tools and the stuff that's coming out of this market. Because as I always like to say, it's not only SQL. They're developing tools that are open and work for tools such as ours. So then challenge number 2 is, how do we talk to PIC? And I know Bruce hit on some of these things, but there's some technologies that came out of that space. And the first large one was a term called JSON, which is really a EDI format that can represent these complex objects, which are very similar to PIC objects. And so this is a standard that they're now using to say all systems are to communicate back and forth using this object syntax that can easily describe a PIC record. REST is another term you'll hear thrown around, which is really just a standard on how you will send these objects back and forth and how you will do things with the object, which we're all used to that in the PIC world, because it's, hey, can you save it? Can you load it? Can you do a calculation on it? The protocols are using, let's keep that all standard too, and let's use the web protocol, HTTP. The real key thing here is everything is open. All open standard tools, not the closed type tools we saw within the SQL world. So that then leads to what I was talking about, and which is now you want to start to update your UI. Once you start using these tools, you can now go out there and use the same tools that any modern UI developer is building and using. And then you'll hear terms like Angular, which is a popular web development tool by Google, or React, which is a tool developed by Facebook, or Bootstrap, which is a tool developed by Twitter. These tools all conform to the standards we just talked before, and that's how new developers are working. And these tools actually are easy for us to represent on our PIC platforms. As I would say in the old days, these same tools would have been very SQL-centric. And in the end, you can build some very responsive applications in the web which can meet the speed and requirements and the richness that we were used to seeing with our character-based, but then add in all the very nice visual features. And that goes to then challenge number 4, which is integration. How do I integrate my system with other systems? Again, the same standard of REST and JSON has basically built our systems to be just services systems. And so a PIC system ends up looking just like any other system to any developer. And the same functions and REST functions that we build into our systems, which we used to build a UI, can also be used to be doing interfaces with a DocuSign out in the world, or sending data to another system, or letting those systems pull data out of our system. The big term you'll hear is microservices and reusability. So again, our systems can tie in and use these tools and take advantage of all the new modern tools that are being used. And I believe that then helps us tackle our final challenge, number 5, which has been talked quite a bit here in this webinar, which is, how do we now get resources? We are now able to describe what our system is. We're able to use normal tools that are out there. The newer developers are not so SQL specific, and they're now open to these more object and complex document type models, which is what a PIC system is. And as long as we can follow up on that and implement new development concepts, then we should be able to go out there and get new resources who will be at home working with a PIC type system. So as I like to now show is, the way the new world is that you get to pick the tool that you wish to use for the problem you're trying to solve. And the way the whole new model is designed is all these systems can interoperate now. And so PIC is able to roll and fit into any development stack model and coexist. And you're able to take what is really a very sophisticated rules engines, which is what most of our PIC systems are, and continue to use that expertise and interface now with new modern UIs and new modern tools. So thank you so much for your time, and now I'd like to hand it back to Paul Giobbi.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Bruce and Rob. Just a couple of house cleaning things here. We've got a little bit more content, and we're going to talk about how we've just announced RESTful services for all of the PIC databases, not just the ones we own. So you want to hang in there for that. And I also wanted to remind you that there are documents available in this webinar that pertain to many of these services. But before we move on, I wanted to also just acknowledge a couple more questions. One of the questions about the JBase or multi-value training curriculum was whether we were going to extend that to Indianapolis. And I would tell you that Cook and Zumasys are looking at extending it in quite a few ways. Some even pertain international. And I don't think we're at a point where we're ready to talk about that, but we will keep you posted. And then another question came up as to what if you're not a big employer like Cook with this magnetic, attraction in the market? Is it analogous? And what I would tell you is that people need jobs, and it's a certain class of people that need jobs. Class is the wrong word, but there's, I think the junior college approach, for example, is very smart on Cook's behalf. These are folks that are in second careers or what have you. And if you consider that the supply and demand of PIC developers is a real issue right now, generally, and we employ non-PIC developers and PIC developers, I can tell you the PIC developer makes pretty good money. So I think you can do this in a lot of different environments. So with that, we'll move on, and we're trying to keep up with all the questions that are coming in and get with you. What I wanted to do briefly, just 2 slides real quick, is to share with you why we partnered with OpenQM. OpenQM is the lowest cost PIC database on the market. For many of you, your annual maintenance number is a factor. The annual maintenance on OpenQM is $23 a user, so it's significantly less expensive. They have many of the external interfaces that we've been talking about via QM client. And I'd like to share the story of a company called DSI Software, which automates heavy equipment and truck dealerships. And they had a situation where the cost of the PIC license to sell their solution was really an impediment. And by moving over to QM, they were able to cut that by about 75%. And they do overnight upgrades for folks that move them to QM, and it's totally masked. It's just part of an application upgrade. Their sales with us have doubled in 2016, and our QM sales overall are on track to quadruple this year. So we're very excited about this database. Many of you, may have seen some of these mailers, and you'll continue to get communication about this. We understand that people don't have any real desire to move laterally from one database to the other, but at the same time, if and when it makes sense, this is a great option for you that brings a lot of value. I also wanted to share that we are busy, and we have been very busy adding amazing new features to JBase. We added case and sensitivity, native encryption, the RESTful services are there for free in our model, and we are busy adding objects and a variety of other features in the database that will essentially allow you to run your existing PIC application, but run it in a much more modern feel, and we like to call it a native approach. So with JBase, your programs are converted to C, therefore they sit on Linux or AIX or Windows as a native program. You can see them in the Windows Explorer, you can connect with them, and you don't need to be a PIC person in order to leverage the rich data that's in your application. And if and when you are ever interested in looking at this as an option for your company, we have a port-based tool that automates, I would say, 99% of your programs coming over. And we have an ability to do something called a jump start, where we compile your programs and show you it running. There's really nothing standing in your way. If you're interested in making your app feel a little more native and modern and applicable to a young developer, you can do that today. And you will see Zumasys continue to integrate deeply JBase into our cloud as well. For those folks that want to go that route, there'll be true efficiencies. Our vision ultimately is not as a database, but more as an application platform. And we want you to focus on your app and your development, but not necessarily infrastructure. So with our cloud offering that bundles JBase on our cloud, we cover the database, operating system, the infrastructure, all the things associated with HA, and DR. We can scale your application to whatever level it's needed, whether it's seasonally or just through organic growth. And we extend that to public clouds as well. And we really let you focus on your app. So if you think of the Salesforce.com example, nobody asks what database Salesforce.com runs on. And they are so synonymous with the word CRM that their stock ticker is CRM. But if you go back 15 years ago, Salesforce was not the leading company. It was things like SalesLogix and MS CRM, and most of us dismiss Salesforce as really not relevant. But today it is the de facto standard, and it is the best application, and it just happens to run through a browser, and it just happens to be rental, and it just happens that they have this unique advantage that it's one common code set where everybody's modifications and additions get added from around the globe, and therefore it evolves at a pace that give it a market dominant position. That is our exact same vision for MultiValue. Envision your application running through a browser. It still is the most customized, best app that you could have. You pay a rental fee for it. You've got some experts running the backup and maintenance, and it is just one more app in the ether that is really critical to your organization. And by doing this, you take some of the criticality or the focus of the management consultants or an acquiring company. You take some of the heat off of pick. A few of our recent go lives on JBase, we've been busy migrating folks all around the globe. Looks like we're getting a little screen delay here, but it's been tremendous momentum. All of the pick databases have essentially been flat on revenue. We grew JBase last year to the highest level it had been in 10 years, and we're above that this year. So we definitely are encouraged by the feedback from the market and the number of people here on the call today that what we're doing resonates. I'm waiting for my screen to load. So at the end of the day, we want to give you a platform on our environment that's secure, it's scalable, and it's cloud ready. And in order to do that, we had to own a database, and we had to own the access tools and AccuTerm to deliver that. Hopefully that explains a little of our motivation of why we got into this business. For those of you that run AccuTerm, just a quick sidebar here, AccuTerm 8 will be out on January 1st. This will include some really cool features, one of which is session resiliency. So if you have remote sites or you happen to run in the cloud today, you know that one of the challenges is you drop connections and you have hung ports, and people might be very deep into an order or something and they have to start over. In AccuTerm 8, we will include a feature that we've got beta now at multiple sites that absolutely love it, but it basically reestablishes your connection, replays. We're adding Tandem into AccuTerm. JBase does not support Tandem, so we're putting it on the AccuTerm side. And we are also rolling out a new browser-based version. This will be a bundle of 3 different products: the web, the traditional desktop version of AccuTerm, and our mobile edition. But the new browser-based edition will replace the AccuTerm Cloud Edition, and it will leverage a lot of the technologies that Patrick said and allow you to run your app through a traditional standard browser environment and run it from wherever you want. So if you're interested in joining our beta list for AccuTerm 8, or if you have any questions about pricing, this will be a recurring pricing model. We are now building in maintenance, and we're doing that so that we can continue to add wonderful innovation to the product. But we also know that many of you have AccuTerm integrated into your app, and there are questions about that. I just want to assure you that the desktop version is part of that bundle and will continue to be. We can give you a sneak peek into pricing and questions if you want to email us at the address below. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we've made RESTful services available. This is an announcement that happened late last week. This is through a technology we call MV Connect. It works on JBase, QM, D3, Universe, and Unidata. Again, it's bundled for free with JBase. If you're interested in attaining this technology and doing some of the things that Patrick mentioned, you can do so. It's $29.95. We tried to keep it very modestly priced, and that includes the first year of maintenance. So check out MV Connect. And I wanted to tell you that we have a variety of kind of skunkwork projects that we continue to dabble in. Zumasys is in a unique position in that we come from a modern infrastructure background. On one side of our company, we're a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds. Actually, I'm not one of those anymore. But on the other side, we're the multi-value community. But what we have is collaboration. For example, our CTO, really wanted management tools in JBase, so we added a very elegant system manager tool that administered backups and things. But another one of our customers really wanted longer retention on their PIC systems. This is specifically for people that are in our cloud, but it certainly would apply to your server. And what we've done is we've created an adaptation to rsync that essentially allows you to go back as a time machine on your PIC system, and you can go back to a specific day, April 4th last year, and see your system state at that moment. And it really is a fantastic way to solve, this kind of desire for enhanced archiving. And it's a less of a product and more of a service that we can talk to you about. So at the end of this, if you're interested in learning more about ZSnap, let us know. And I wanted to tell you that Patrick's MB 2.0 webinar, this kind of Web 2.0 development strategy, was the single most popular webinar we've ever hosted. We actually sold it out last time and reached capacity. We've addressed that, and we're bringing the seminar back next Tuesday, July 25th, and we'd love for you to attend that. I also want to let you know that we are coming out with an advanced version of this. And lastly, many of you hear what we're saying but want a little more guidance and a little more detailed examples. And we can make Patrick available to you to discuss that, whenever you're ready. I think the last question we had was, coming from a managed 2000 Unidata background, can JBase OpenQM offer the same similar MRP application functionality out of the box? Could we transition some of our existing custom applications to JBase or QM somewhat easily? And the answer to your question is absolutely. Both databases have a high degree of compatibility, much like it was when you moved from, say, AdsMentor to Unidata or whatever platform it was. And we can assist you by making those tools available to you. Another question was, is the overall intention to convert from non-JBase MB environments, D3, et cetera, to JBase, as JBase can connect to these externally required methods? Our answer is really to, again, present options. Our overall intention was to see the applications in this market continue to thrive. And in order to do that, we needed choices, we needed innovation, we needed different price options. Our overall intention is not to cannibalize the market, but simply to be a force of positivity and innovation. And to be honest with you, treat you guys in the market the way we wanted to be treated as a D3 partner and provider in this space. A couple more questions. I'll move through these, and then we can wrap up our time. But what's the base way to migrate from MB base to JBase? Again, it's I think getting on the phone with one of our representatives who will contact you, making our porting tools available to you. We can either do it for you through this Jumpstart program, which is a for-fee compilation of your programs, and we deduct that fee off of any migration you do with us. That would apply to MB base, or we can simply make the tools available to you and we can get you on your way. I think the last question was related to RealityX. Does MB Connect work with RealityX? And the answer is it does not today. I'm just looking through the final questions here. Since it appeared that Universe has a larger share of the market, why focus on JBase? It's a great philosophical question. The lion's share of the market is run by Rocket, and I think they're doing a great job. But again, we went into kind of what else was out there that was innovative, that could be refreshed and retooled to really accomplish some of our goals around NoSQL and attracting young developers. And we feel, having now acquire the technology that we have a technological advantage in JBase that is unique to the market that just wasn't being shared. And we're thrilled by the reception, but by no means is this, everything we've talked to you about here today is applicable to all flavors of the PIC community. So we're not trying to single anything out. I think, I'm sorry to keep doing this, but there's a fair amount of questions about AccuTerm 8. Can the AccuTerm 8 web interface be used with D3 system? Absolutely. There's also a mention about Core Technologies, which is a company down in San Diego. That was a suggestion from one of our attendees in response to a question about EDI. So if you don't get sufficient answers from us, I highly encourage you to reach out to Core Technologies. That's K-O-R-E. They're fantastic, ethical people, and I think you'll enjoy your interface with them. I want to thank you all for joining. I want to tell you this is just the beginning. We're not dropping the discussion here. So if you want to go deeper, please when you get that follow-up from our team, just interact, and we'll get the right people on the phone and go at whatever pace you need. This is a fantastic time for our market. Some people view it as a time where there's quite a bit of concern. I personally view it as fantastic opportunity, and I've never been more excited to be in MultiValue, and the fact that there's so many people on this call today is a great encouragement to us at Zumasys, and we really thank you for your time and your attention. Have a great afternoon.